Hi, folks. The Filipina here. And today I'm going to discuss a topic that always seems to strike a nerve with you folks, no matter what side of the debate you're on, the subject of age gap relationships. Now, if you visit the Philippines, you're immediately going to come face to face with couples who have an age disparity of 10, 20, sometimes even 30 years. You'll probably have an instinctive gut reaction to it and might see it as creepy, immoral, and even predatory. But is that the way we see it? Or are you just looking at the situation through the lens of your own culture when it comes to the chronologically challenged? How much of an age gap is too much? And where do you draw the line? Now, everyone watching this video will have an opinion, and some of you will have very strong opinions. So, first, let me make it clear that I'm not advocating huge age gaps. I'm here to look at the situation as it really is and trying to explain the reasons behind it. If I see a 70-year-old with a 20-year-old, I'll probably wonder what the deal is too. But maybe that's my own personal bias showing, and I try to keep those to myself. What fascinates me is that every person seems to have a pretty rigid opinion as to what's morally acceptable. I did an interview with a large age gap couple about 2 years ago, and the comment section was full of people offering their views, but almost none of them were the same. One person would quote the rule that says it's acceptable for a woman to be half a man's age plus 7 years, while another person would claim that any age difference beyond 20 years was immoral, but none of them could say why, except for their personal preferences. If you say 20 years is the max, what about 21 years? Does that extra 1 year suddenly make it immoral? Ultimately, you realize you can't put a mathematical equation to it or a one size fits all rule. Like most things, it's completely subjective. All we can do is make a law to determine what's legal and leave the moral judgments to the individual. As long as you're talking about two legal adults, it's really up to the people involved, right? And if they join together voluntarily, they must be getting some benefits out of it. But is it just the obvious reasons? Are the pros and cons a little more complicated than we might suspect? And how is it different here compared to where you come from? Well, aside from the moral issue, let's look at the practical aspects. According to a recent survey of 3,000 Americans, people with a gap of 10 years were 39% more likely to split up compared to couples who were closer in age. And a 20-year age gap increased the failure rate to 95%. That's some pretty strong evidence against age gaps. But that research was conducted in the West, where societal pressure might have a lot to do with the added friction. When everyone's staring at you with looks of silent disapproval, it can take a toll on your relationship. But does the same situation exist in the Philippines? Actually, no, it doesn't. The truth is, if you're walking around with a much older foreigner, chances are that the only looks you'll be getting are jealous ones. But if that's the case, then why don't you see as many older Filipino men with younger women? Well, there's two main reasons for that. And the first is that by the time a local guy reaches 40, he's probably married already. With no divorce in the Philippines, it's just as dangerous to date a married man as it is for you guys to date a married Filipina. Don't do it. So when an older Filipino is seen arm in arm with a much younger woman, it's often presumed that the relationship might be illegitimate without the possibility of marriage. Or worse, that both of them are married, just not to each other. But the other reason, to put it bluntly, is that foreigners are usually seen as a higher status symbol, and it's presumed that the woman involved not only found a man that's single, but who can give her a better life. We Filipinos are practical people, and there's nothing wrong with having a brighter future. So while we're on the subject, let's talk about another common objection, the potential for financial coercion. When a younger and probably poorer woman pairs with an older, richer man, the economic disparity can create a power imbalance. And in the worst cases, it can lead to manipulation and control of the more vulnerable party. But I'd argue that a situation like that can occur regardless of the age. It's all about power. And even a younger man can exert the exact same level of control if he's got the money to do it. So, what does that have to do with age gaps? It doesn't. And the real objection is that most people suspect that a younger woman could only appreciate an older man because of his money, which might be true in the West, but it's not necessarily true here in the Philippines. If you don't believe me, it's because you're seeing things through a Western lens. And assuming what's true in your country is what's true in mine. It seems inconceivable to you that a woman could look at a guy who's 20 years older than she is and see anything of value. Just the mental image of an older guy holding hands with a younger woman might make you cringe and assume all sorts of things. But that's not always the case here, and it's not the way we see it. I did an entire video on why Filipinas appreciate older foreign guys without referring to the financial aspect at all. And if you haven't seen it, it'll answer a lot of questions. If you don't believe me, then it's your loss. But the most common objection I hear about age gaps involves a lack of shared interests and common goals. I mean, what could a man in his 50s possibly have in common with a woman in her 20s? Doesn't a younger woman want to go out bar hopping and dancing with her friends? At an age where a much older man might be perfectly content just watching the sunset with his woman by his side, wouldn't that be considered boring as hell by his younger mate? If you immediately answered yes, it's probably because you're thinking like a Westerner again. Most Filipinas, the good ones anyway, don't want to party till the sun comes up. We learned long ago to appreciate the simple things, and our version of happiness is spending time with our partner, whether it's sitting out on a patio or watching a movie together. We rarely feel the need to be doing something exciting all the time because it's not something we're used to anyway. And those of you with Filipina partners know what I'm talking about. A 50 peso milk tea and a short walk on the beach will keep us happy as a clown. On top of that, if you think that being with an older Filipino will solve any problems with compatibility, think again. I don't know how to put this delicately, but even if you choose a woman close to you in years, trust me, there's no guarantee you'll be any more compatible in the conversation department. Many members of the older generation don't speak English as well as the younger ones, and the range of topics can be even more limited, especially in the case of a provincial woman who might not have many interesting life experiences at all. When you spend every day working in the fields, that doesn't automatically make you a fountain of lively conversation just by virtue of your age. Unless you want to talk about rice, then we can talk your ear off. The other potential compatibility issue involves the question of children. Filipinos typically want to have kids, especially if they don't already have any from a previous relationship. Now, depending on the guy and what stage of life he's at, this can admittedly be a problem, but I've found that most mixed couples get around it. Some guys make it clear from the start that kids are out of the question. Some don't mind having a child or two. And I've talked with several men who say they'll give their younger wife a child as a parting gift before the final curtain. As long as you work it out beforehand, you can usually deal with the issue. The problems occur when you put off having the discussion, because if children are something your partner wants, she's not gonna change her mind. Now, for you guys that actually want children, or maybe to start the family you never had, there are clear and obvious benefits to having a much younger wife, and the most obvious benefit is only an issue because we manage to fool Mother Nature. We live too long, and as a result, our sex drives are out of sync. For most of mankind's history, we had a lifespan of about 35 years. Women typically stayed fertile until they died and maintained a healthy sex drive from the time they became adults. But evolution didn't keep up with advances in modern medicine, and now we often live into our 70s and 80s. We weren't meant to live this long, and as our lifespans increased, so did the disparity in our sex drives. The average woman hits menopause at age 51, which can reduce libido and make sex less comfortable. It doesn't mean no desire at all, but it generally results in less activity in the bedroom. So now we have half the older population not as interested in sex, and the other half wondering what the heck happened. We tricked Mother Nature, and this is her revenge. The result is that many men find themselves in marriages with wives who see sex as a chore, something to be checked off the to do list, or even worse, something to be used as a weapon and a means to manipulate. Any man can tell the difference between a woman who desires sex and a woman who tolerates it, and sometimes the latter just isn't enough. By pairing with a woman a decade or two younger, the sex drives are back in sync, and all is right with the world again. But not all the reasons for an age gap revolve around sex. A lot of it is just a numbers game. In the West, there are plenty of single older women, probably veterans of the divorce wars. But here in the Philippines, just like the older men, most of the older women are married too, even if they're no longer with their husbands. The fact that we have no divorce means that these women will probably never return to the dating pool, which leaves only the younger women. That's not to say that you can't find a mature Filipina that never got married or might have been widowed, but you'll notice right away that when you go on a dating site or come here in person, it's overwhelmingly the young women that try to catch your eye. That makes some of you uncomfortable, but it's just supply and demand. And what about the advantages for the younger woman? Well, the most obvious one is the financial benefit and having the peace of mind to know where the next meal is coming from. That's actually a concern here. So, looking for a relationship that ensures a roof over your head is a practical consideration, and there's nothing wrong with that. Studies show that the more secure a couple is, the greater the chance of them staying together, with fewer arguments about money matters. But just as with sex, the issue goes way deeper than finances. An older man is more mature and settled, which are often the two main things that a younger woman values, especially a Filipina. An older guy has already gone through his wilder days, and no woman wants to marry a child that decides he's not ready to settle down 8 months after the woman becomes pregnant. That happens a lot here, and every Filipina knows it. There's also the mentor effect. An older Western guy is often full of wisdom and sage advice. A Filipina can learn more about the way the world works in 30 minutes with an older foreigner than she'd get in a year of being with the average local guy her same age. I'm sorry, but it's true. She'll have a chance to learn financial responsibility, emotional maturity, and maybe even how to run a business. Now, I'm not saying that every older man has the purest of intentions or the knowledge to make a big difference in a woman's life. Some clearly do not. But the average mature man usually brings quite a bit to the table in that regard. Now, if you're only interested in very young women and your primary concern is her age, then you might have some other issues going on. And we all know how I feel about that. But if you're looking for someone to shower with love and affection, and decided that maybe a younger woman is the best choice after all, then I will stand in your way. Am I promoting big age gaps? Nope. I'm just telling you how things are in this part of the world, so you can decide for yourselves. Just like my last video about cheating, I'm not promoting or excusing it. I'm explaining the reason why it happens, just as I did here. In case you're not familiar with my content, I usually try to act as a reporter without an agenda. And my goal is to simply give you an accurate picture of the Philippines. Things are different here, and my job is to explain why. I don't personally care what other people do as long as it's legal, and hopefully based on mutual respect and genuine care. Agree or disagree, I'm interested to hear your comments. But one thing's for sure, there's gonna be a lot of them. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll be back on Tuesday with something else to consider. Till then, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like a Vulcan, using calm, cool logic to address your concerns about life in the Philippines. Like Mr. Spock, I'm a half-blood as well, with one foot in the East and one in the West, giving me the ability to meld with your mind on topics concerning the culture here. All that I ask in return is a thumbs up on this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting the notification bell so you know when the next data has been presented for your analysis. And if you really want to become part of the crew, feel free to check out my Patreon page for bonus content and exclusive features. Oh, Jim, you look good today. Have you been working out? Oops, bonfire. Well, since it looks like I'll be busy for the next few hours, I suggest you view my other videos during my absence. Oh, Captain, you really are going where no man's gone before.